Parents hired fake cops to evict me from my condo on Halloween night. Hey friends. Got a sec? Drop your thoughts in the comments and hit subscribe. It's quick for you, but it really means a lot to us. Alright, let's dive into today's story. Original post, October 30th, 11:47 p.m. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but I need advice and honestly just need to get this off my chest. I'm Emily, 26F, and what happened today has completely shattered my relationship with my parents, David, 58M, and Linda, 56F. For context, I've always been the responsible one in my family. While my younger brother Tyler, 24M, dropped out of college twice and still lives at home playing video games, I graduated with honors, got my CPA license, and landed a position at a major accounting firm. 2 years ago, after saving religiously and working 70-hour weeks during tax season, I bought my own condo in downtown Seattle. It's nothing fancy, a one-bedroom unit in a converted building, but it's mine. Or at least, I thought it was. My parents have always been weird about my success. When I got promoted to senior accountant last year, my mother's first comment was that I was making everyone else in the family look bad. When I bought the condo, my father kept insisting I should have consulted the family first, whatever that means. They've made countless passive-aggressive comments about how I'm too young to own property and how I don't understand the responsibility. The thing is, they've been struggling financially for years. Dad's construction business went under during COVID, and Mom's part-time work at a dental office barely covers their groceries. They're behind on their mortgage, and I've helped them out multiple times, probably given them close to $15,000 over the past 18 months. I never asked for it back because they're family, but apparently, that wasn't enough. This evening, around 6 p.m., I heard a knock at my door. When I opened it, a man in a cheap suit handed me an envelope and said, "You've been served." My heart dropped. Inside was what appeared to be an eviction notice, claiming that the rightful owners of my condo, David and Linda Morrison, my parents, were terminating my verbal lease agreement and giving me 24 hours to vacate the premises. I immediately called my parents, and my mom answered with this fake concerned voice, asking if everything was okay. When I told her about the eviction notice, she said, "Oh honey, we didn't want it to come to this, but that condo is technically ours. You were just staying there temporarily, remember?" I was speechless. There was never any such arrangement. I have all the paperwork, the deed is in my name, I paid the down payment from my savings, my name is on the mortgage. Everything is legally mine. When I pointed this out, my father got on the phone and said they had documentation proving I was just holding the property in my name for tax purposes, but it was really theirs. The document they sent looks official at first glance, but there are several red flags. The case number format is wrong for our county, the judge's name doesn't match any judge in our district, I looked them up, and most tellingly, it demands I vacate by 5 p.m. on October 31st, tomorrow, Halloween. Here's where it gets interesting. My parents know I have tickets to my company's huge Halloween party tomorrow night. It's been planned for months, and I'm on the organizing committee. They've heard me talk about it endlessly. The timing of this eviction, for when they think I'll be out of the house, cannot be a coincidence. I've already called a lawyer friend, Jennifer, who confirmed the document is completely fraudulent. She said filing false legal documents is a felony, and what my parents are attempting could be construed as attempted theft by deception and fraud. She advised me to file a police report immediately, which I'm planning to do first thing in the morning. But here's what's really bothering me. How did they think this would work? Did they honestly believe I'd just pack up and leave my own home because of some fake papers? Were they planning to change the locks while I'm at the party tomorrow? The more I think about it, the more sinister this becomes. I also discovered something else tonight. I have a smart doorbell with a camera, and I reviewed the footage from earlier. The man who served me the papers got into a van with no official markings, and I can see my father's truck parked across the street during the whole interaction. They were watching. I'm not going to that Halloween party tomorrow. Instead, I'm going to be ready for whatever they're planning. I've already changed my locks tonight, thank God for 24-hour locksmiths, installed a few extra security cameras I bought from Best Buy, and I'm staying home tomorrow to see exactly what they try to pull. Jennifer is coming over tomorrow afternoon with some additional documentation to protect me, and she's bringing her colleague who specializes in criminal law. We're also filing for an emergency restraining order first thing in the morning. The betrayal hurts more than I can express. These are my parents. The people who raised me, who I've supported financially even when I could barely afford it. And they're trying to steal my home using fraudulent documents, timing it for when they think I'll be gone. I'll update tomorrow after whatever happens on Halloween. Something tells me they're not going to give up just because I don't leave for the party. Update 1, October 31st, 7:23 p.m. I honestly don't know whether to laugh or cry right now. The events of today have been so absurd that if someone had told me this would happen, I'd have thought they were pitching a bad movie plot. As I mentioned in my original post, I stayed home today instead of going to my company's Halloween party. Jennifer and her colleague Michael arrived at 2 p.m. with a stack of documents, including copies of my deed, mortgage paperwork, and bank statements showing my down payment. We also had successfully filed for an emergency restraining order this morning, though it wouldn't be served until tomorrow at the earliest. Around 4:30 p.m., my doorbell camera alerted me to movement. I watched on my phone as a van pulled up, the same unmarked van from yesterday. 3 people got out, 2 large men in what looked like sheriff's deputy uniforms and a woman in business attire carrying a clipboard. They walked up to my door with purpose. The deputies knocked aggressively, announcing, "Sheriff's Department, open up. We have a court order for immediate eviction." Jennifer immediately started recording on her phone while Michael called 911. I spoke through my doorbell speaker, "I'm not opening the door. Please show your identification and warrant to the camera." The woman held up some papers to the camera, but when I zoomed in on my phone, they were the same fraudulent documents from yesterday. The deputies started getting agitated, saying they would break down the door if I didn't comply. That's when things got interesting. My doorbell camera has a wide angle, and I could see my parents' car pulling up behind the van. They got out and started walking up my driveway, my mother carrying what looked like a lockbox, presumably with new locks, and my father holding a drill. Michael was on the phone with actual 911 dispatch, explaining that people impersonating deputies were attempting to break into my home. The dispatcher confirmed that no eviction orders had been issued for my address and real officers were en route. The fake deputies started attempting to jimmy my door with some kind of tool while the woman kept shouting about legal authority and contempt of court. My parents stood back, trying to look casual but clearly waiting for their moment to swoop in. Within 6 minutes, the longest 6 minutes of my life, real police cars pulled up with lights flashing. The fake deputies immediately tried to play it cool, with one approaching the real officers saying they were on the job. The real cops weren't buying it. They asked for official identification, badge numbers, and the court order. As the fake deputies fumbled with excuses, one of them actually tried to leave the scene. He was immediately detained. The look on my parents' faces when they realized real police were there was priceless. My mother dropped the lockbox, and my father started backing toward their car. One of the officers noticed and called out to them to stay put. I came outside at this point, with Jennifer and Michael flanking me. The real officers examined the fraudulent documents and confirmed they were completely fake. The case number was nonsensical, the judge's name was fictitious, and the court seal was clearly photocopied. Here's where it gets even better. One of the real officers recognized one of the fake deputies. Turns out he was an actor who does crime reenactments for true crime shows. The woman was also an actor, often playing lawyers in local commercials. They both immediately flipped on my parents, admitting they'd been hired through Craigslist to play a role in a Halloween prank, and had been paid $500 each in cash. My parents tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding, a family joke that had gone too far. But when the officers found the drill, new locks, and a U-Haul rental agreement in my father's truck, dated for today, showing they planned to move my stuff out, their story fell apart. The actors were arrested for criminal impersonation of law enforcement officers. The third deputy turned out to be my cousin Brandon from my father's side, who apparently thought he was helping with a legitimate eviction. He was also arrested but seemed genuinely shocked when he learned the truth. My parents were arrested for conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted breaking and entering, filing false legal documents, and conspiracy to commit theft. The officers took the fraudulent documents as evidence, along with the tools they'd brought. As they were being put into separate police cars, my mother started screaming that I was an ungrateful daughter, that everything I had was because of them, and that family doesn't do this to each other. The irony of that last statement wasn't lost on anyone present. Jennifer documented everything and is already preparing a civil lawsuit. Michael, the criminal lawyer, says the charges against my parents are serious. They're looking at potential felony charges, especially for the fraudulent legal documents and hiring people to impersonate law enforcement. The actors, trying to save themselves, gave the police screenshots of their text conversations with my parents, which explicitly stated they needed them to forcibly remove someone from a property while dressed as deputies. My parents had even provided the fake uniforms. I'm sitting here now in my condo, still processing everything. The Halloween decorations on my street feel surreal. Kids are trick-or-treating while I'm dealing with the fact that my parents attempted to steal my home using hired actors and fake legal documents. I've had several missed calls from Tyler, my brother, and other family members. The news is spreading. I'm not ready to deal with that yet. Tomorrow, I meet with both lawyers to discuss next steps. Jennifer wants to file a civil suit for emotional distress and attempted theft. Michael will be monitoring the criminal case. The restraining order should be served tomorrow, though given that my parents are currently in jail, that seems almost redundant. I'll update again once I know more about what charges they'll actually face and what happens at their arraignment. Update 2, November 3rd, 2:15 p.m. The last few days have been a whirlwind. My parents were arraigned yesterday morning, and the list of charges is extensive. David is facing criminal impersonation in the first degree, attempted grand theft, conspiracy to commit fraud, filing false instruments, attempted breaking and entering, and harassment. Linda is facing the same charges, though her lawyer is trying to argue she was coerced by my father, a claim that falls flat considering the text messages showing she was the one who actually hired the actors. Their bail was set at $50,000 each. Here's where it gets interesting. They called me from jail asking me to bail them out. The audacity is breathtaking. When I declined, they had Tyler call me, begging and saying that our parents made a mistake but didn't deserve to sit in jail. I told him they could use the equity in their house. You know, the house they actually own, unlike mine. The actors who played deputies have been charged with criminal impersonation of law enforcement, a Class E felony. They're cooperating fully with prosecutors, providing everything from text messages to recordings of phone calls with my parents. Apparently, my mother had called them multiple times to rehearse their roles, and these calls were recorded. My cousin Brandon was released on his own recognizance after prosecutors determined he was genuinely duped into thinking it was a legitimate eviction. He's apologized profusely and has agreed to testify against my parents. The investigation has uncovered something even more disturbing. My parents had created an entire folder of fabricated documents, including a fake family trust document claiming my condo was purchased with family money backdated loan agreements, suggesting I owed them $300,000, a forged quitclaim deed transferring my property to them, fake bank statements showing transfers that never happened. The detective assigned to the case told me they'd clearly been planning this for months. They'd even gone to an office supply store and purchased a fake notary seal. The store security footage shows them buying it in September, destroying their claim this was a spontaneous Halloween prank. My phone has been blowing up with messages from extended family. The family is completely divided. My mother's sister, Aunt Patricia, called me a traitor to the family, and said I should have just given them the condo if they needed it. Meanwhile, my father's brother, Uncle Robert, called to say he wasn't surprised. Apparently, my father had tried something similar with their parents' estate 20 years ago. The most heartbreaking message came from my grandmother, father's mother, who's 82. She left me a voicemail saying she was proud of me for standing up for myself and that my father had always been too clever for his own good. She also mentioned that she's removing him from her will. Tyler is staying with our parents' neighbor while they're in jail. He's been texting me constantly, alternating between anger and pleading. He seems to genuinely not understand why I won't just forgive and forget. When I explained that they committed multiple felonies, he said, "But they're our parents." As if that's a get-out-of-jail-free card. Here's a development I didn't expect. A detective called me this morning saying they're investigating whether my parents have done this to others. Apparently, the elaborate nature of their scheme raised red flags. They're examining whether any of their previous business deals involved similar fraud. My security cameras have picked up some interesting activity too. Last night around 11 p.m., my Aunt Patricia and another woman I don't recognize came to my building and tried to get in. When they couldn't, they started putting flyers under doors, flyers with my photo and text claiming I'm a dangerous tenant who steals from families. Building management has already issued them a trespass warning and provided the footage to police. Jennifer has filed the civil lawsuit, seeking damages for emotional distress, attempted theft, defamation, for the flyers, legal fees, punitive damages. She believes we have an extremely strong case, especially with all the evidence. The fake deputies' testimonies alone are damning, but combined with the fraudulent documents and the premeditation evidence, she says it's one of the clearest cases of attempted property theft she's seen. The restraining order has been granted and served. My parents are prohibited from coming within 500 feet of me, my home, or my workplace. This includes through third parties, which means they can't send relatives to harass me either. I've had to take time off work to deal with this. My boss has been incredibly supportive, especially after I showed her the legal documents. She mentioned that the company has resources for employees dealing with family crisis situations, including counseling, which I'm going to take advantage of. This morning, I got a call from my parents' mortgage company. Apparently, they've missed 3 payments, and the house is heading toward foreclosure. The representative was calling me because my parents had listed me as an emergency contact. I explained the situation and that I would not be assisting them financially. I'm starting to see the full picture now. They were desperate, facing foreclosure, and instead of asking for help or downsizing, they decided to steal my home. The worst part is, if they just asked, I probably would have helped them again, maybe even let them stay with me temporarily while they figured things out. But they chose crime instead. I'll update again after the preliminary hearing next week. Update 3, November 15th, 4:45 p.m. The preliminary hearing was yesterday, and the outcome exceeded even my lawyer's expectations. Both the prosecution and defense presented their initial arguments. The evidence against my parents is overwhelming. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Catherine Hayes, laid out the case methodically. The premeditation shown through the September purchase of the notary seal, the elaborate forged documents dating back months, the hiring of actors to impersonate law enforcement, the tools and locks ready for breaking and entering, and the U-Haul rental agreement. The defense tried to argue this was a misunderstanding between family members about property ownership. The judge actually laughed. Not a good sign for my parents. When their lawyer tried to suggest I had verbally agreed to hold the property for them, the judge asked for any evidence of this agreement. They had none. The actors testified via video link. They have their own legal troubles to deal with. The woman who played the business-suited court officer broke down crying, saying she was a struggling actress who thought it was a legitimate acting job until she was in handcuffs. She provided emails where my mother explicitly told her to be aggressive and not take no for an answer. The most damaging testimony came from an unexpected source. The prosecution brought in a forensic accountant who had examined my parents' finances as part of the investigation. Not only have they not paid their mortgage in 4 months, but they've also taken out multiple payday loans, maxed out 6 credit cards, and owe over $40,000 to various creditors. But here's the kicker. They had recently inquired about a home equity loan using Condo's address, claiming it as their property. The bank had flagged it as potential fraud, which is now additional evidence against them. The judge bound the case over for trial on all charges. He also made a point of saying this was one of the most brazen and ill-conceived attempts at property theft he'd seen in his 30 years on the bench. My parents' bail was continued, but with additional conditions. They must wear ankle monitors, cannot leave the county, and are explicitly barred from any contact with me, my workplace, or any property I own. They made bail this morning. Oh. They used their house as collateral through a bail bondsman. The same house that's in foreclosure. The bail bondsman apparently wasn't aware of the foreclosure until after the paperwork was signed. He's now trying to revoke the bond, which would send them back to jail. The family drama has escalated to new levels. I've been officially uninvited from Thanksgiving, Christmas, and any future family gatherings by my Aunt Patricia. This was delivered via a Facebook post that tagged me and called me a family destroyer and money-obsessed narcissist who chose property over blood. The comments on that post, however, have been surprisingly supportive of me. Multiple family friends and distant relatives are pointing out that my parents committed crimes, not me. My cousin Sarah, from my mom's side, commented with screenshots of my parents asking various family members for money over the past year, including her elderly parents. Tyler has moved back into my parents' house now that they're out on bail. He finally got a job at a fast food restaurant to help with their legal fees. He texted me that I've ruined his life, because now he has to work instead of focusing on his streaming career. I didn't respond. Remember that investigation into other potential frauds? It's expanding. 3 former business associates of my father have come forward with allegations of contract fraud and embezzlement from his construction business. Apparently, my parents' financial troubles go back further than COVID. My father had been taking deposits for construction jobs and never completing them, using the money to pay off other debts. One victim, James Mitchell, lost $50,000 for a home addition that was never built. He's been trying to sue my father for 2 years but could never serve him papers because my parents kept dodging process servers. The criminal charges have now made them easy to find. On the civil suit side, Jennifer has added additional counts for defamation due to the flyers and the social media posts my extended family has been making. She's documented over 40 separate defamatory statements, including accusations that I stole money from my parents, forged documents to steal the condo from them, am involved in illegal activities at my accounting firm, have been possessed by greed and evil. That last one came from my very religious Aunt Margaret, who apparently thinks I need an exorcism. The value of my condo has unexpectedly become relevant. Due to recent development in the area, a new tech company headquarters 2 blocks away, property values have surged. My condo, which I bought for $425,000 2 years ago, was just appraised at $575,000 as part of the legal proceedings. My parents were trying to steal an asset that had appreciated by $150,000. Jennifer believes that when we win the civil case, she says, when, not if, my parents will be forced to sell their house to pay the damages. Given that it's already in foreclosure, they're likely to lose everything. Michael, monitoring the criminal case, says the prosecution is considering offering a plea deal, 2 years in prison, 5 years probation, and full restitution. He doubts my parents will take it. They still believe they've done nothing wrong. My therapist, yes, I started seeing one, says my parents show signs of severe narcissistic personality disorder, particularly my father. The elaborate nature of their plan, the complete lack of remorse, and their ability to convince themselves they're victims despite being the aggressors all point to this. I've also discovered that my parents have been telling people for months that they helped me buy my condo and were co-owners. Several neighbors in their subdivision thought the condo was a family property. This explains why some mutual acquaintances have been cold to me lately. They thought I was keeping my parents out of their own property. The preliminary trial date has been set for February 2025. In the meantime, I've had to upgrade my security system, change my phone number, and take a different route to work after I noticed my father's truck following me one morning. I reported it to the police, and he was warned about violating the restraining order. Despite everything, I'm doing okay. My company has been incredibly supportive, my real friends have rallied around me, and I'm sleeping better knowing I stood up for myself. I've even started dating someone new, Benjamin, a cybersecurity specialist who jokes that my family story makes his crazy ex tales seem boring by comparison. Final update, February 28, 2025, 3:30 p.m. The trial ended yesterday, and I finally feel like I can breathe again. It's been 4 months since my parents tried to steal my home, and justice has finally been served. The criminal trial was brutal but conclusive. My parents had fired their public defenders and hired a family friend attorney who was clearly out of his depth. Their strategy seemed to be portraying me as an ungrateful daughter who misunderstood their help with purchasing the condo. This narrative fell apart spectacularly when the prosecution presented their evidence. The forged documents were examined by a forensic document expert who testified that the signatures were traced from my real signatures on other documents. The notary seal they'd purchased was compared to legitimate seals and found to be obviously fake. The September purchase date proved months of premeditation. The actors testified in person this time. The man who played the main deputy was particularly damaging. He revealed that my father had coached him to be physically intimidating and to make her fear for her safety if she doesn't leave. This elevated some of the charges. The most devastating testimony came from a surprise witness, my maternal grandfather, who I hadn't seen in 5 years due to a different family dispute. He testified that my parents had approached him 6 months ago asking to borrow his retirement savings to invest in real estate. When he asked for details, they'd mentioned my condo specifically, saying they were going to take it over and rent it out for income. He'd refused and warned them against doing anything illegal. The prosecution had found him through their investigation. My father took the stand against his lawyer's advice. It was a disaster. He insisted that family property is communal, and that as parents, they had rights to anything their children owned. When pressed by the prosecutor about the fake deputies, he actually said, it wasn't fake if it worked. The jury visibly recoiled. My mother didn't testify, but her constant outbursts during the trial led to multiple contempt warnings from the judge. When the forensic accountant testified about their financial fraud extending beyond just my situation, she screamed that everyone was jealous of their success. What success? They were in foreclosure. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours. Guilty on all counts for both parents. The sentencing was 2 weeks ago. David received 3 years in state prison, 5 years probation upon release, $50,000 in fines, mandatory counseling, and a permanent restraining order. Linda received 2 years in state prison, 5 years probation upon release, $35,000 in fines, mandatory counseling, and a permanent restraining order. The difference in sentences was due to my father's leadership role in the conspiracy and his testimony, which the judge called delusional and concerning. But that's not where this ends. The civil trial was last week, and it was much quicker. With the criminal convictions in hand, Jennifer successfully argued for summary judgment on most counts. The judge awarded me $275,000 in damages, including $100,000 in punitive damages for the malicious and premeditated nature of their actions, emotional distress compensation, and full legal fees. My parents' house was already in foreclosure, but the civil judgment meant that any remaining equity after the foreclosure sale goes to me. Their house sold at auction last Tuesday for $420,000. After paying off their mortgage and other liens, about $180,000 remained, which will come to me as partial satisfaction of the judgment. Tyler has been living with our Aunt Patricia since the house was sold. He's still working at the fast food place and has actually apologized to me via email, admitting he's starting to understand how toxic our parents really were. He's been seeing a therapist and is beginning to recognize the dysfunction he grew up with. We're not ready to rebuild our relationship, but it's a start. The extended family remains divided, but the criminal convictions swayed many. Aunt Patricia still posts about me being a traitor, but most family members have quietly unfriended or blocked her. My grandmother has been my biggest supporter, even testifying on my behalf during the civil trial about the pattern of manipulation she'd witnessed from my father over the years. The other fraud investigations resulted in 2 additional criminal cases against my father for construction fraud. He'll likely face those trials while already in prison. 3 more victims have come forward with similar stories of paying for work never completed. Here's a bit of poetic justice. My condo's value has continued to rise. The new tech headquarters opened this month, and comparable units in my building are now selling for $650,000. My parents tried to steal a $425,000 condo that's now worth over $650,000, and instead, they're in prison and have lost everything. I've been promoted to senior manager at my firm, partially because of how professionally I handled this crisis. My boss mentioned that my ability to remain calm and methodical under extreme personal stress showed leadership qualities they value. Benjamin and I are still together. He's been incredible through all of this, even attending the trials with me for support. He jokes that my family drama has set a high bar. His parents just send passive-aggressive Christmas cards. The actors who played the deputies pleaded guilty to lesser charges and received probation and community service. The woman has actually thanked me for pressing charges, saying it was a wake-up call about carefully vetting acting jobs. My therapist has helped me understand that my parents' behavior wasn't really about the condo. It was about control and their inability to accept that their daughter had succeeded where they had failed. Their narcissism couldn't tolerate me having something valuable that they didn't control. I still live in my condo, though I've invested in serious security upgrades. I have cameras covering every angle, reinforced locks, and a security system that would make Benjamin proud. I've also gotten to know my neighbors better. Turns out my parents had been casing the building for weeks before Halloween, and several neighbors had noticed but didn't think to mention it until after everything happened. The restraining orders are permanent, and my parents will be registered felons when they're released. They've lost their home, their freedom, their reputation, and their daughter. All for a crime that was never going to work. I've started volunteering with a local organization that helps people dealing with family financial abuse. It's more common than you'd think, and my story has helped others feel less alone and more empowered to protect themselves. Looking back, the red flags were always there. The resentment of my success, the entitlement to my achievements, the financial irresponsibility followed by expectations that I'd bail them out. I just never imagined they'd go this far. To anyone dealing with similar family dynamics, document everything, trust your instincts, and don't let their family stop you from protecting yourself. Family doesn't mean you have to accept abuse, fraud, or attempts to steal your life's work. My condo is now worth $225,000 more than when my parents tried to steal it. I'm safe, successful, and surrounded by people who actually care about me. My parents are in prison, have lost everything, and have no one to blame but themselves. Sometimes, the best revenge really is living well, and pressing charges when people commit felonies against you. Thank you to everyone who followed this story and offered support. Your messages meant more than you know during some very dark moments. I'm finally free from their toxicity, and while I never wanted it to end this way, I'm at peace with standing up for myself. The next chapter of my life starts now, and it doesn't include anyone who tries to steal my home on Halloween.